Hello, this is a Schiedmayer grand piano, 190 centimetres long, made soon after 1904. It has the date 1904 on the fall here, and the serial number inside actually suggests it's an older piano, but it can't be because this date is on here, and it's also on the frame. The same date is on the frame too, so clearly it's made in 1904 or beyond, or after, sorry. The style of cabinet work does suggest that kind of period with these gate legs, and it's Bechstein, we call it Sheraton style, or gate legs, or dual twin legs, or something like that. You can see the wood we think is satinwood. We're pretty certain, we've double checked in the trade. If you're a wood expert and think it's not satinwood, please let us know. But normally they're rosewood of this kind of age, or just becoming other woods after 1900. Schiedmayer, older ones will all be rosewood, or nearly all. So there's beautiful inlay here, and the client wants us to repolish it, I believe. So just doing an assessment to see what kind of extra work needs doing as well. And the casework is, well, very tasteful. The veneer is pretty much all there actually, so there's no re-veneering to do on the piano. Just repolishing. There's quite a lot of there's a difference in colour from that there to there. That's interesting. And the top lid is quite damaged really, so it's scratched, and generally could do with repolishing. Obviously we could tidy the piano up. If French polishing takes 70 hours and is quite expensive, we don't really do any other finish. It's on a piano like this, it's worth doing it properly or not doing it at all. So it could possibly be tidied up if that was that is an option. So but there are quite a lot of scratches on the top here, and it would certainly be quite stunning if it was repolished. The inside rim is also a light coloured wood, so not sure if that's satinwood or not. So I say we're not expecting satinwood. It's just not a common wood for a piano, but clearly that's light underneath there too. So that's probably what it is, as we've been told. That's really pretty there, isn't it? Beautiful inlay, and I think candidate for repolishing. Obviously, it's quite a stunning piece of furniture. The key tops are ivory and perfect, I think. So we'd probably buff them. I think they need buffing. Let's have a look. Yes, if they're a bit dull, then they tend to attract the dirt, but they are in stunning condition, really. This is very encouraging. Now the strings are original and the tuning pins are original. You can usually tell that, as we've said before, because it's very, very small tuning pins. There's the star lever, medium star, and they're very, very small. So they're original, and the strings are all original. And some of the bass ones are quite flat. If we listen to beautiful, wonderful, worn tone, and then there's one out of tune there. So the tuning pins are loose. So the bottom ones here are very flat. Now you could possibly replace the tuning pins. Some of the strings in the bottom here are very tubby. Now that could be improved by turning the wire in the direction of the wire. That will certainly improve that tremendously. Those bottom ones there. But the tone is still very rich. So it would be possible to replace tuning pins and keep the strings, or you could restring the piano. If you're going to repolish the piano, then obviously the insides, if it looks slightly dirty, it would be nice to get the inside done as well. And the frame is actually very pleasant. It doesn't seem to have lost that much of its polish at all. Bechstein here would look all mottled very often, but this is kept really well. So you might want to keep that rather than redo it. Or if you'd want it immaculate, then we could redo that. Obviously this is all painted over beautifully too. Quite similar to Steinway in its design. In fact, there's several things that are similar to Steinway on the piano. Richard Lipp's another make that was made in Stuttgart, has very high quality. So I'd put Schiedmayer and Richard Lipp almost on a par with Steinway and Bechstein and Blüthner and Bosendorfer. Extremely high quality, both those two makes, and both made in Stuttgart. Now the soundboard's in good condition. There is a crack. If you took the strings off, and you would see there's a line there. So it's not really a crack. It's just been beginning to open up. That can be shimmed, and very often done. But then we'd have to try and match this badge again, logo as we call it, or decal, sorry, which we would try to do, obviously. But you could leave the soundboard and just refinish it, because there don't seem to be any other cracks. Though when you do take everything apart and you dry it out a little bit, because I think this piano has got damp in the past, then you might find cracks opening up. Often down there you find one with this, but it's where the planks meet that you tend to get that. So I'm not sure, it doesn't really affect the tone, it's a cosmetic thing. Cracks really show you that the piano has dried out at some stage, or sometimes the wood comes together because it absorbs moisture. There's no moth in the felt here. If we redid it, obviously we change that felt if you're going to restring the piano. So there's some decisions to make. I have to think about it and see what seems to be the best decision, or if I'm not quite sure, then obviously it might be the most economical decision. All the strings are there, none of the strings are broken, so it might be an option to keep the strings, or you might want it restrung if you want it to look as perfect as the outside does. Schiedmayer, a lot of older pianos have this lyre, sort of like a lyre. That's why it's called a lyre, this, because it looks like the instrument called a lyre. But obviously you get columns later on Bechsteins, for instance. But earlier pianos often have these lyres. It made me think it was an older piano, but in fact 1904 it says, so it must be 1904 or afterwards. But as I say, the gate legs are more commensurate with that kind of age, and it's got its original socks on, which I find amazing, really, what's left of them anyway. It's quite common that clients keep those on, obviously trying to protect the pedals, so it's just interesting to see that. Apart from the frame looking similar to a Steinway frame, the music stand falls forward like this. And older Steinways, as we mentioned before, you have to be careful because most music stands nowadays go backwards there, and if you push it backwards you break the where the hinge is here. The hinge comes off, and that's happened with the 2 or 3 pianos we've seen over the years, if not more, where this has been pushed backwards. So obviously folds forwards and then you push the whole thing in. The cheek and the fall are integrated like a Steinway too, so this doesn't pull out on its own. It's fixed to the cheek like that, so the whole lot will pull out, including the front rail. So this is very similar to a Steinway, with the whole lot pulling out together, and this integrated in. If you pull that off, then the cheek will come off. But it's quite useful to be able to take the whole thing out at once. Now look at the action. The hammers are quite worn. That's obviously the main wearing part, as we've mentioned before, and you can see that quite flat. So too much hammer hitting the string, and you get an indistinct sound. It doesn't hit the string cleanly, and therefore the harmonics aren't brought out. And also the hammer's quite soft, so definitely changing the hammer would be very much would improve the tone tremendously. And the shanks and the rollers you do at the same time, because you might the rollers also got a little bit squashed, so the hammer's a bit low down. The hammer blow will be a bit greater than it should be. Very Steinway like this as well. It looks like just like a Steinway here, with this instead of a rail going across here, they've got individuals. There's no spring at the back like Steinways often have, but the lever's very similar. So there's obviously a lot of similarity there, and the Richard Lip can be similar as well, though they do different styles of action too. So Schiedmayer, I say, more similar to Steinways. The felts here are very tight, and the felts in the front of the key are very tight too, so they don't really need doing. And you can obviously replace everything, but there's no real need for that. The hammers, certainly hammer shanks and rollers, will definitely improve the piano tremendously. It definitely is helpful having all of this integrated together. Like, that's exactly the same as a Steinway, and then it just slots back in at the sides there. Obviously it's a two-handed job really, and I'm holding the camera, but that is helpful. They don't always fit as nicely as this one does though. Our serial number under the string there suggests the date is much earlier, pre-1900. Looking it up on the serial number in the book, Piano Atlas, but clearly we've got a date here of 1904, so we're going to have to say it's after 1904 and with the casework style, so I don't know what that number is. Schiedmayer pianos can be difficult to date with their numbers. Here we can see the damper here is hang is not going down, so it could have been a bit of moisture. There's another one there that stays up when you pull it up, and so obviously that's the guide rail here. Just needs opening up a little bit. It's quite common. You often get that when a piano's been fully restored and the felt in the guide rail is too tight, so that can happen too. But it's a beautiful singing tone, except for the fact the hammers are really not allowing it to be as clear and crisp as it should be. And that's a very, very tubby sound. This is a Grote and Steinweg restored with new hammers, 1923. That's very hard to tune that note too, so another loose tuning pin. So looking at the assessment sheet, you can see the main work I put down here. Bass strings are flat, so re-pin and re-string would be my recommendation. You could potentially keep the bass strings, but the bottom ones are very tubby. They could be improved by turning. So that's obviously a choice to make. And if you're going to repolish the whole piano, which I'm sure would be a sensible idea, then re-stringing it, make it look perfect on the inside too. The frame is in good condition, so whether you'd want that redone as well, that's something we could think about, because it does look very, very pleasant. Replace hammers, shanks and rollers is an obvious job too. So I think that's covered everything. Just have a listen to the piano in a second. One thing that I forgot to show you earlier, is the hammer blow. That's the distance between the hammer and the strings, is very high, 56 to 60 millimeters. Should be more like 47, possibly up to 50. So that's unusually high, and obviously improves the touch tremendously if we correct that. I didn't measure the key weighting, down weight and up weight at all, because when we put new hammers on, that'll change anyway. So that can be fitted as you want it to. 50 grams in the centre normally, 48 in the bass, 48 in the treble, 52 in the bass, and slightly lighter or heavier if you prefer a lighter or heavier touch. So that's a Schiedmayer grand piano, 190 centimetres long, made in or soon after 1904, I think, and it's a satinwood case, which is very unusual, with beautiful inlay. So we're very pleased to get this piano to quote on restoration. French polishing takes 70 hours, so it's a long job, but it's well worth doing on this piano, definitely. And it's a very fine instrument. Up with the top makes the piano, really. If you're a piano tuner and have experience with Schiedmayer, you could perhaps verify that. And certainly as a tuner, I've always enjoyed Schiedmayer pianos greatly. This one needs new hammers, very much so. The tone here isn't like it should be, and because the hammer's too flat, hitting too much of the string, and is also very soft. Well, it's got new hammers, they're harder, and we can then voice them down to taste to make them softer if you'd like them softer. And here the bass strings are very flat. There's many tuning pins that are loose, so re-pinning at least, and re-stringing would suggest, if you're going to repolish the piano, re-stringing makes sense, because the new strings will look very, very beautiful. And then the soundboard can be restored as well, and the frame is already looking good, so I have to decide whether we redo that. So a few decisions to make. If you're interested in having a piano restored, then please write to us, info@robertspianos.com. There's a damper there that's not working, and that just needs easing the guide rail felt. Thank you very much for listening.